What is up, guys? Fado82 coming at you with a weekly Rust update video. I apologize that it's a couple days late. I got caught up with some things for work this week, guys, and I wasn't able to devote as much time to YouTube as I would have liked. But rest assured, we got some great content on the way, so please stay tuned. Let's get right into it. We all know the big patch didn't arrive this week, but it's going to be coming out next week and it's going to be massive. We can probably show you about 30% of what the patch is going to entail with what's live on the dev server right now. And there's been some big changes to some of the systems that we use a lot in the game in terms of building and crafting. So if we go ahead and pull up our crafting wheel, we'll notice right off the bat the aesthetic of it has changed. It's now red instead of blue, so it's more in line with sort of that rustic look that they're going for. But beyond the aesthetic of it, guys, there's a utilitarian function here. It tells us exactly the amount of resources we need to craft each individual piece, and then it tells us the aggregate amount of resources that we have to work with. So for instance, a wall here costs 50 wood and we have 1,350 wood to use right now. Let's go ahead and place a wall down, pull the crafting wheel back up, and we now have 1,300 wood, indicating we use 50 wood on that wall. So guys, this is pretty self-explanatory, but what it prevents us from doing is running into situations like we've all run into before, where we miscalculate, we start building and realize we're missing a couple floor tiles, or worse yet, missing a doorway, and we have to frantically go out there and scramble for those resources. So it's really cool stuff. In addition, guys, the crafting in the inventory has changed as well in terms of the user interface. So if we go ahead and select the default blueprint, say for wooden ladders, we know everybody loves ladders, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. It tells us the amount of resources we need for the ladder and then the amount of resources we have. So we have enough resources here to make 2 ladders. If we want to make the maximum amount of that particular item, we can go ahead and select this button here and it'll queue up 2 ladders. We can go ahead and hit craft. It indicates the time that we need here, which would be per ladder. It would cost 200 seconds. So if you go ahead and start crafting it, it's going to be 3 minutes 18 seconds. It's now queued up here, and that queue carries over into the game, so we can see that right above our health meter it's telling us we have 2 ladders crafting and we have a little over 3 minutes to go. If we want to go ahead and cancel that, we can simply go here and hit the X and cancel it. Really cool stuff, guys, and really much needed in the game. And there's been some changes, guys, in the F2 menu that are going to be coming next week with the patch that you want to be aware of. In the graphics category, there's 2 sliders you can now use to see how it affects your performance. One is anisotropic filtering and the other is parallax mapping. You can play around with each of them to see how it's going to work for you. Mileage is going to vary based on your system specs and your GPU, but you can go ahead and check them out. If you're going to go ahead and crank them all the way up, I recommend re-enabling procedural virtual texturing. From some tests that I did, it did seem to make a little bit of a difference for FPS, so make sure you re-enable that because that's off by default. If you go ahead and go to the input tab, guys, you want to be aware there's now an option to auto-transmit your voice, which means you'll no longer need to use a push-to-talk button. So when this is enabled, your voice will transmit freely instead of having to hold down the push-to-talk button. Be aware if you guys enable this, if you enable it by accident or if you choose to enable it, whatever you say will be broadcast in the game, and that can sometimes be information you might not want other players to hear. And yet again, we have another way to light our way in the dark of night in Rust. A new item has been added into the game, which is a miner's hat. It's similar to the candle hat we saw a few weeks ago, and it costs 50 cloth to make, 50 animal fat, 100 metal fragments, and it is not a default blueprint, so if you wish to use it, you will have to find it and research it. In terms of its usage, it gives off a better radius of light that's more consistent than the candle hat, and it lasts for a little bit longer. It appears to last for about 5 minutes in game. I'm not sure, guys, how much it'll be used. I haven't seen the candle hat used too much since it's been introduced into the game, and the dark of night doesn't seem to be what it used to. But it's a pretty cool feature nonetheless, and can't wait to see people wearing it. Be aware, as always, guys, if you have that on your head, it does give your position away. And guys, that's all that we have for updates in terms of what's on the dev server right now, but there'll be more to come next week, so definitely stay tuned. What you're looking at now is some footage from our update video last week in which we were covering ladders. I just wanted to kind of go back in time and talk about ladders because it was a very controversial item that was implemented into the game, and it strongly divided the Rust community. I read all the comments, guys, I always do, and I also went to Reddit and read the dialogue that was occurring there, and it's very clear that the community kind of was sharply divided. Most of the people who were commenting were upset that, you know, not so much that ladders were implemented into the game. I think people were cool with that, but they were upset that the ladders could be placed inside their building blocked area, inside the area that was protected by their tool cabinet or tool cupboard. And I just wanted to touch on that, guys, and say, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or kind of ruffle feathers or anything, but I want to prepare you guys that, you know, the tool cupboard is a placeholder, and it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction by the company to mitigate against griefing. everyone knows no one wants to play, Griefing Simulator 2015, but the idea of these tool cupboards being sort of this invisible force field that, protects your base and prevents people from doing things isn't really in line with the type of game that, Rust is. And if you look at the Rust Twitter updates about 2 months ago, they actually removed the tool cupboards on the dev branch for about half a day. And then they went back and they put them back in the game, but they put them back in because they said there's not enough base defenses in place at this point. Now, since that point in time, they've been slowly adding in more base defenses. They've added in the different types of the barricades. They have added in the floor spikes. So they'll probably be adding in more as well. But what that leads me to believe is that the company is moving in the direction of removing those tool cupboards, which means you might be losing your, building privilege. Now, what is that going to look like? No one knows. We'll work through it together, guys, when it happens, if it even does happen. So, we'll figure it out, and it's all about adapting. Even with the ladders, base designs have changed, strategies have changed, and, people were able to pretty quickly adapt to the ladders. So I think that it's something that is going to happen, and I just kind of wanted to open up that dialogue and just to kind of put it out there that I think the tool cupboards are on their way out. I don't know if something else, will be put in place, but I think that idea of this, invisible building blocked area was just, a knee-jerk reaction, and I don't think it's going to be there much longer. That's my own opinion. I could be way off base, and I know it's not a popular opinion, but I feel like the game is moving in that direction based off of that Twitter post and then based off of the implementation of the different defensive measures they've been focusing on. A lot of people, guys, on Reddit had different suggestions and ideas. Some were good, some were bad. One person posted a comment that you should be able to lock your base down when you go offline so that no one can raid it. And, a system like that would just break the game, guys. That is a very silly idea to have. If that were the case, then no one would ever get raided, because even if it was an active raid and the defenders were losing, they just go offline, lock their base down, and at that point the game's broken. So, guys, the company kind of walks a fine line. Facepunch walks a fine line because they don't want a game where people get grief left and right. But, I don't think that they want a game either where there's sort of these silly things in place like an invisible force field around your base by a magical cabinet that exists. And I just wanted to touch on that because it seemed like with the ladders, a lot of that discussion was leaning more towards the building blocked area than it was towards the ladders themselves. So anyways, guys, as always, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the feedback. We get some great videos coming on the way, so please stay tuned. This is Fado82. Peace. Oh man, I knew I shouldn't eat those shrooms in the forest. God damn it.